Hi, welcome back to the BPSA Beyond Dispensary Podcast. Today's a really special episode and I'm joined with Leya from OSCE Toolbox. So Leya, would you mind introducing yourself and what is OSCE Toolbox?
Yes, so I'm Leya. I am a final year medical student. I should be graduating in 6 months, so I'll be a doctor soon, hopefully. And I'm the founder of OSCE Toolbox, which is a pharmacy OSCE education platform that has been running for 2 years now. So in that time, we've supported over 3,500 students to prepare for their pharmacy OSCEs through our online platform, our in-person events, and our connections with universities and societies.
What are the benefits of OSCE Toolbox? Why should students join it and what should people expect?
I think our biggest benefit is our scenario bank. So we have a scenario bank of nearly 250 OSCE scenarios ranging across the different station types. So we have responding to symptoms, medication counselling, new medicine service, and different body systems from ear, nose and throat to respiratory system to allergy. And we have different difficulty levels. So we have something for everyone from first years to final years at universities across the UK. And our scenarios are very detailed. So we have very detailed student instructions, actor instructions, and a mark scheme. And the mark scheme is really where the benefit comes in because a lot of people can figure out, the student instructions and actor instructions themselves. But when it comes to working out a mark scheme, you really need something that's actually been verified and checked by a clinician. And that can actually show you, okay, what steps should I have done in this scenario? Not just what's the overall course of action, but what's actually going to get me the marks and what things should I be doing in a real clinical interaction. So I think those are the main benefits of us as a platform. In terms of why students should use us, of course, as the obvious answer, do better in your OSCEs, perform at your best in your OSCEs. No matter how good you are in your OSCEs, there's always room for improvement. So if it's something that you struggle with or something that you're confident with, OSCE Toolbox can still boost you to a higher level than whatever you begin at. But aside from that, the reason why I picked OSCEs to focus on is because OSCEs are a proxy for clinical practice. They're, if you're confident in your OSCEs, chances are that you'll be confident interacting with patients in person. So it's one of the best ways to make yourself clinically ready is to get better at OSCEs. So that's why if you want to become a better clinician overall, then I think students should use OSCE Toolbox.
Absolutely, thank you. I think that's really important as well, like you mentioned about the mark schemes, because anything like my uni, 0 mark schemes. So having something there, that really helps with OSCEs. What would you say are maybe some misconceptions or what students struggle the most with OSCEs?
So I think what students often get wrong is they focus on the knowledge aspect, which makes sense because, of course, the knowledge aspect is the part that you're going to be tested on in all of your exams, and they do show up in OSCEs. You have to know what to do and, how to recognize a condition to be able to detect it and recommend a course of action. But the mistake that students make is they overemphasize on how important the knowledge is and not enough on the practical skills. So things like the actual communication skills, being able to signpost a patient, being able to structure their discussion. And that is something that gets missed a lot. And that's the common areas where students miss out. So there are a big group of students who will perform really well in their written exams, but fail at the OSCEs. And that's because of this misunderstanding, not practicing actually having a structure, preparing a different structure for different types of station types, not understanding the importance of communication skills, certain phrases to use with patients, how to avoid jargon effectively but still provide enough detail but not go into too much detail that you open up a hole and lose your OSCE station because you have to explain everything that you're saying, but also time management too. So OSCEs are very, very tightly time managed. The stations are between usually 5 to 10 minutes, and not practicing under timed conditions is a big common pitfall. It's a mistake that I've made in the past, and it's very important to be able to practice having those conversations within those specific windows of time.
Yeah, lovely. And you mentioned it just there about the preparation stage. So when would you suggest students start preparing, or when do you think is the right time to start preparing for your OSCEs?
I think earlier than most students think. OSCEs are very different to writtens because I do think it's possible to cram for written exams. Of course, cramming isn't necessarily the most effective or healthy way, but you you can definitely pass with cramming. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do when there's less content and you're like in your earlier years, but it's possible. I don't think you can cram for OSCEs. It's skills, it's testing skills, and skills have to be built up over time. You cannot develop a skill overnight the way that you can, memorize a mnemonic overnight. So I think that is why you need to prepare so early. So I say early and regularly. So that's how I've always approached OSCEs. So things like having regular sessions from rarely on in the year. So if your OSCEs are in, let's say, March, I would say start preparing from November, like at the latest. So you have a good few months, and it can account for busy periods where if you have other exams, you might want to miss a few practice sessions, but practicing every 2 weeks or every month even, and then closer to OSCE time, practicing every few days or at least once a week, I think is the best way. But the important thing is start early, but you don't have to do intense practice. So start early, but do it regularly and just a bit at a time. I think that's the best way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's what I've tried to practice myself as well. When I'm in the practice at OSCE sessions, what should I do? Or say it's first year, how would you go about structuring it, or how to get started into it?
So I think the most important thing is students often, when they don't know where to get started, it's because they have a lack of understanding about their exam. So I think the best thing to do to begin with is find out specific information about your exam. So we have a free PDF, I think, called the OSCE Method on our Instagram. It's in our link tree that people can download to look at exactly what information, but you need to find out from very early on, either by looking at slides or asking older years or emailing your OSCE lead, how long is your exam? So how many stations do you have actually, first of all? Is it in one day? Is it over several days? How long do you have for reading the student instructions and to sit and make notes? And then how long do you actually have to actually do your station? And then what are the station types? Is it 10 possible things that could come up, but only in 5 stations? Is it you're guaranteed to have 1 medication counselling, 1 responding symptoms, 1 new medicine service, 1 physical assessment? What exactly is going to come up? And then once you know that information, that makes things a lot easier, because you then know, okay, this is what I'm practicing for. So people struggle, I think, to get started because they don't even know what they're preparing for in the first place. So begin there, and then once you've done that, find a group of people that you can regularly practice with, agree on a frequency, make sure you have that mutual commitment, and then just do your practice sessions. And the easiest way, of course, is using OSCE Toolbox's scenarios, or any scenarios. If your uni provides scenarios, then those are the gold standard, I would say. If your uni provides scenarios, that's the first thing that you should be using, because it will be, their mark scheme will be best matched to what you can actually expect. But when you run out of those, or if you want to save those for later, then I would recommend the OSCE Toolbox scenarios. And if you just make sure you're narrowing it down so that it best fits your difficulty level, station type, and body system, if that applies, practice using those in the stations, and have one person be the actor, one person be the student, and one person be the examiner. Do your station, get the examiner feedback, make some clear bullet points for you to improve on, and then rotate until everyone's practiced twice, ideally. And then before your next session, review those feedback points, so you know that that's what you need to focus on improving. And then after that session, evaluate, did I improve on those? What's next? So that's how I would say to approach it.
Yeah, I think I'll try and do that. I'm not going to lie. I need a little bit of help with that. I think that structure as well that you said, the feedback, that'd be really good to implement. Mm-hmm. So obviously you come across lots of different students and people from all over the UK. Is there a certain area of OSCEs where you think people are less prepared or could do with more help with?
Yeah, so this is a great question, because I actually recently did my dissertation, and I did it on the prescribing reforms for pharmacy students, and it included a UK-wide survey of pharmacy students, and I think it was 222 responses, and it found that very starkly, compared to other skills, students felt way less confident with diagnostic reasoning and physical assessments. And it makes sense, because these are the two things that are more recently expected of pharmacists, where they weren't as much before. So physical assessments, people know that it's not as common to do that as a pharmacist as it is, if you're a doctor or a nurse. So they're more newly integrated into OSCEs. So they're more it makes sense that their students are going to be less confident because universities have spent less time focusing on teaching these and diagnostic reasoning as well. But it is important obviously that students stay ahead and stay ahead, because you can be expected to be assessed on those sometimes even when your teaching hasn't quite caught up to the standard, because it takes them a while to deliver the teaching and then a student to actually provide them with feedback, and then they can act on that feedback for the next cohort of students. So because of that, it's important that students stay proactive and work on improving skills. So that's why I think it's useful that me as a medic is supporting with OSCE Toolbox, because medics, we've been doing diagnostic reasoning and physical assessments forever. So I think we can hopefully provide some insight and support our peers in pharmacy with those skills.
And do you think, because of your medic background, it's helped you structure your OSCE Toolbox and structure the way the platform works?
Definitely. So there's a lot of resources available for medics. So I've seen a lot of resources. It's almost overwhelming, as a medic, to have so many resources, because there's lots of platforms, because it's more profitable, to be honest, to target medical students. So there's loads of stuff. So because of that, I feel like I've been exposed to a lot of platforms, and I've seen, what things are beneficial, what isn't, what is effective, what isn't, what looks good but isn't actually useful. And a lot of my peers can provide similar feedback. So I think it was very useful in designing this platform, because of course there isn't any other OSCE focused pharmacy student platform that's dedicated to pharmacy students. So we were sort of starting from scratch in that particular field, but because we've used so many resources ourselves, and obviously we've done OSCEs, we're doing OSCEs still, I think that's why it's been so helpful. We're on the field right now, so it's useful for us to evaluate. And I also I tutor pharmacy students as well. We do a little bit of one-to-one tutoring, and the main reason why I actually keep doing it is so that I can use our OSCE Toolbox scenarios, and that way I know what the experience is like as a user, and I know if it gives me ideas for, okay, what features do we need to add, what feature isn't actually very useful, and in these particular scenarios, do we need to word something better in the briefs, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it is useful being a medic.
That's really useful to know, actually. And have you seen some similarities and differences between medical OSCEs and pharmacy OSCEs?
Yeah, definitely. So the OSCEs are broadly quite similar. Of course, it's a time scenario where you're interacting most of the time with the patient. That's actually one difference I would say is I'm in almost all of my OSCE stations as a medic there with a patient, whereas in pharmacy OSCEs, there's a lot of non-interactive ones. Firstly, it depends obviously which university you're at, but there's loads of non-interactive ones where you're not actually interacting with anyone, which is that's not a thing in medicine. When you say OSCEs, we just think, okay, you and a patient. And also as a pharmacist, your OSCEs can often have another healthcare professional, like a nurse or a doctor. We actually don't practice that. We don't practice working with pharmacists at all in our OSCEs. I've never heard of a medic ever doing that. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, to be fair, I guess it's because the interactions can be, it's often a pharmacist feeding back and correcting a doctor. So as a doctor, what would that station look like? We're just accepting advice, because we're just yeah, okay, thank you, so it'd be an easy station for us. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think our stations are usually longer. So our stations are usually at least 10 minutes. We don't have 5-minute stations, but I know specifically, for example, at De Montfort University, their stations are most of the time are 5 minutes. I know it can vary other places, but we never have a station as short as 5 minutes. That's just way too short for any of our interactions, and our longer stations are 20 minutes long, which I think can happen in pharmacy, but again, less frequently. I think that's the main things. Again, obviously the type of tasks that we're doing. So ours is less drug focused. We do have we have similar stations in terms of we actually have prescribing stations too, but we have things like ATE assessments, so like an emergency full assessment, where a patient is like potentially literally dying, and you have to like do a full assessment head to toe and hand over to another clinician and say what you would recommend. So we just have a bit more of a broader range of duties, I would say. So of course, because the actual roles are different. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting though, all those like little differences.
Yeah.
Something that I've like personally seen is, say we're all outside the dispensary waiting to go in, and there's a few people that seem really confident, they're ready, they're on it, but then they get to sit in the chair and it's like they freeze or they panic. What advice would you give to students maybe who are experiencing that?
So there's two angles to this. I think one of them is like nerve management. So of course, a lot of students sometimes like they can perform really well, but it's just the exam nerves that are difficult. And for OSCE nerves, I have like a few specific go-to like techniques that I use. So the first one is I have an app on my phone called Breathe, and it doesn't have to be a particular app or something, but I do like some breathing exercises. So I don't do them on a regular basis, but always before an exam, because I do get quite anxious. Even now, and I've been doing them for so long, like they're never ending. I'm 24. How am I still doing exams? But yeah, so I have this Breathe app. So I'll do like a breathing exercise before. And it's really nice. It's got like an animation and some like calming music. And then this one, people like they don't believe me when I say this, but I swear it works. You know, power posing. Have you seen the TED talk on power posing? I swear it works. So I'll go to the bathroom, but it's like you just have to do like open body poses, like open your legs or like stand tall, and I'll just do them. And it is evidence based. Like if you do them for 5 minutes, you'll feel more confident, and I promise it does work. So I power pose, I do breathing exercises, and then this one is a bit more personal to me because I'm Muslim, so I will always read a few like prayers beforehand. But you know, if you're religious, like that can apply to any religion, just saying a few kind of prayers before and like focusing on my connection with God. And because to me it's like, okay, I've done everything I can, it's in your hands, like please help me. So I think those are the things I would say, nerve management. But for students that have more like severe anxiety, very useful to seek support from your pastoral support unit, because sometimes it requires extra support, sometimes it does require like counseling. And for some students do take like medication to help with their nerves before exams. So recognize when it is severe. There's my safety net for that. And then the other side of it is the knowledge side and the skill side. So some students feel underprepared, and the way to combat that is preparation. Practice does make perfect. I mean, there's no perfection, but it gets you as close as possible. So yeah, start early, do things regularly, practice in the same format your exam is going to be, take your practice sessions seriously, act on your feedback. And then, because I don't feel underprepared for my OSCEs. Like, I've never felt that because of all the preparation I do. I felt underprepared for exams, but never for OSCEs because I follow that specific revision regimen. So yeah, and I think when you've done those scenarios, similar scenarios to what you're expected to do, you don't feel underprepared. So yeah, that's the two sides of it.
It's really interesting you mentioned about power posing. I have power shoes.
What's that?
I have like certain shoes that I wear, and like when I'm in the shoes, I'm the pharmacist.
What are the shoes? What do they look like?
We call them Dorothy's because they're not red, but they have, you know, when you can like clink them.
Oh, that's nice. I love shoes that make noise. I feel like they do make you feel confident.
Power shoes, honestly, it does work. So I understand that. So I've seen that you've been getting involved with like the societies recently. So how do all the pharmacy societies and OSCEs fit in together?
Yeah, so I love working with the pharmacy societies because it's so nice to, you know, work with students that are like so genuinely like passionate about creating that community and like helping other students. So I think working with societies is such an it's such an important aspect of OSCE Toolbox, and something that we've only really focused on this year, but it's definitely something we want to continue long term, and we have like such a great relationship with these students, and it's just made the whole experience so much more enriching and rewarding. But I think societies, you know, they're on the ground, they know exactly what their students need like at their university, so they help us because they help us to best support their students. We can find out from them what do they need from us, and it's also the best way for us to reach students, because a lot of students don't know about resources. It's difficult. Where do you go to find these things? Like if you're not Googling, or if it doesn't come up on Google because it's not the specific keywords, they wouldn't find out about it. So the societies help to raise awareness like among students about these resources. And also we've this year, for example, we've given societies discount codes, and then if those codes are used, they get some cash back, so that way they get some money to like fund further initiatives. And we're also like sponsoring activities and stuff like that, just to try and like support these student communities and provide support for pharmacy students in more ways than just specific OSCE prep. But moving to just focus OSCE prep, we've been doing specific OSCE sessions with those societies. And like I said, because the OSCEs are different at different unis, the societies really support us by helping us understand, okay, what specifically do you want from us? Like what type of scenarios do you need? Which year group are you delivering it to? So we've been doing a lot of in-person ones, but we're moving now to provide the resources to students like for the scenarios, because our scenarios do all the work. Like we don't actually need to be there, because the mock scheme contains the answers, and we are available to answer any questions like through our DMs. We respond within 24 hours 95% of the time, on like email, social media, so any questions can like be sent over to us, and the society students usually have like my phone number, so they can message, so we don't need to be there, and it's just a scalable way for us to support as many societies as possible. But yeah, so we are collaborating with, I believe this year it's 25 of the pharmacy societies. But yeah, if your pharmacy society isn't collaborating with us, or you're on a farm stock committee and you want to get involved, like drop us a DM. Like we're more than happy to collaborate in some way, support your initiatives, and yeah, do an OSCE session for you. Yeah,
that's really brilliant how like closely linked you work, and how like closely you are as like a group. That's really cute. So in terms of like the students then, how do you think pharmacy students are shaping the course of like their education? And you mentioned like the prescribing aspect. It's like, how do you think they are working together?
So I think students are so important, and I feel like very often, especially in pharmacy, I don't think students understand the impact that they actually have. And well, it's more, I'm preaching to the choir here. You do, obviously, but a lot of students don't. Like the majority of the student body, they kind of just go about their course and they do their thing. But students play like an active role. They will notice before lecturers if something isn't meeting their needs, and if they feel like the education they're receiving isn't actually keeping up with the changing demands of a pharmacy profession, because they'll go on placement and realize that I feel underprepared for this, or they'll be working at a pharmacy and realize, okay, this is not aligning with the teaching I'm receiving. This work is helping me not more, but you know what I mean? Like it's disproportionately helpful. So I think it's very important for students to like whistleblow or provide feedback. So I don't know how it works at your university, but I know, for example, with medics at Uni of Leicester, they send out surveys on a regular basis about student experience and like how our placements have been, and they do actively work on that feedback. But even if your university doesn't show it, the fact that they don't is something that should be improved. So having student reps, if you don't have student reps, get in touch with your uni, lobby for it to become a thing, like run a petition, and if you do, make sure your student reps are voicing concerns. Make sure you have student feedback surveys so that everyone in the year group gets a chance to actually voice their opinions. Encourage your university to actually start the year by sharing what the feedback was from the previous year group and the changes that have been made to your year because of it, but also what feedback you provided and what changes are being made for the year group underneath you, the junior year group, because that's something they do at University of Leicester, which is why University of Leicester has quite a high student satisfaction rating, at least for medicine. So I think all pharmacy schools should be doing the same thing if they're not already, and I think even especially when it comes to like resources. So for example, I know a lot of lecturers will recommend OSCE Toolbox because students have told them about it. Lecturers aren't necessarily going to know about resources that students are using unless students mention it. So if you think it's useful and you think that your lecturer should run again some OSCE sessions, and maybe they say that we don't have enough resources, they can use OSCE Toolbox. You can let them know that we exist. It's also helpful as well because so far we haven't had any negative feedback from lecturers, but if we do, obviously we would like to know so we can get in touch and make improvements. So it's very useful, like if you show your lecturers and ask them what they think, and if there's any issues from our side, like get in contact. Like we are super amenable to feedback. We love feedback, positive or negative. We'll take anything that we can get. So yeah, as a student, just make sure your opinions are being heard. Make sure it's happening on like a large scale. All of your voices matter the most. And also tell your lecturers like about resources, get their opinion as well, and keep them in the loop with what's going on with your student. What's the feeling? What's the sentiment of your year group?
Yeah, that communication and feedback's really, really important. I'm really glad you brought that up. Now, you're a student yourself, so how have you managed to keep on top of things, graduate, pass and do everything, as well as doing OSCE Toolbox?
With great difficulty. It's been it is tough, I think, being like a student founder, or even like there's lots of founders obviously that have full-time jobs, which being a student is, and I feel like you do always feel like you're not doing anything enough. Like you always feel like I want to do more on this thing or this other thing, but that just comes with the role. So I think accepting that as just part of multitasking, that you will feel that way. But for me, I work in seasons, so I will plan in advance and know, okay, this time of year I'm going to be focusing more on OSCE Toolbox. At this point it's exam season, so I'm going to be focusing more on finals. So for example, now I've got my finals in less than 4 weeks, so I'm dialing down the amount that I can do on OSCE Toolbox on a day-to-day basis, and other team members that don't have exams coming up are taking on a bit more of a bulk of the work, and we're reducing activities that aren't as key, and we're just focusing on the key activities for OSCE Toolbox so I can focus more on exams, and especially because the team is a bit leaner because a few other people are also off for finals, whereas last year I was intercalating, so I was doing a master's in healthcare management. I had a lot more free time because I wasn't on placement every day. So at that point in time, I could focus a lot more on OSCE Toolbox, and then obviously the dissertation came up, so I could dial it back. But it's knowing in advance that is going to happen. So at the time, you don't feel like, you know that this is a conscious decision that I'm making, and I know I'm going to switch that balance around soon. So after my finals, I'll be on elective in Malaysia, hopefully, and I will have more time for OSCE Toolbox, so I'll be able to come back and focus on that instead of revising because my exams will be done. So knowing that those seasons exist and like being aware of how you're going to fluctuate your workload balance conscientiously, I think is the biggest thing, and having those non-negotiables of protected time, and also knowing, you know, if it came down to it, which one would I have to prioritize? So I know at the minute for me that is medicine. Like if I had to pick one, you know, I've worked so hard for years, it would have to be medicine. But just so you've got it set out in your head, and that way once you have that information and you know exactly what your priorities and values are, you can make those decisions quite clearly. Yeah.
And if there's someone thinking, I want to create a platform, or I want to get involved, or they want to start something new, what advice would you give to them? Or say if you start this all over again, what's the main piece of advice you would give to them?
Okay, good questions. Okay, so I would encourage any student, if they're thinking about starting something, to do it, to try it, because we need more founders. To be fair, I think there is a bit of a startup revolution. I think there are more and more startups popping up, but we need more because we're able to help each other and support each other in such a great way because we understand like where we've come from. And I say the reason I'm saying each other is because a lot of startups in the healthcare space are for other like healthcare professionals, but it can be anything, of course. If you have other interests, maybe you have a creative interest that you want to monetize, but I think it's really important to try. And the reason is because the main thing that holds people back is confidence. And and that's it, being afraid. And I just don't think that's a good enough reason, because we can all do it. Like, now we're very lucky. Obviously there's a lot of awful things going on in the world, but we're very lucky that we're at a time where information is very freely available. There's a lot of advice from people that have done these things before for free that you'd never be able to access before without, you know, having a direct connection to that type of person. So it's really like, you can take advantage of those things and you can have a go. And if it fails, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, you might, if you bootstrap, for example, okay, you'll lose a little bit of money that you put into it, but otherwise you'll have learned lessons, you'll have had fun, you would have actually tried something, and you'll know that you tried something. And even if that doesn't work out, there might be something that you try again, and you use that knowledge and experience that you've gained from the first time to actually make the second thing work. So it's just the fact that there isn't that much to lose, I think. And you can always, there's very low cost effective ways to test ideas before doing them. So for example, I think I spent about £500 on our like platform and getting like our beta version of the platform available before we pilot tested it at DMU to get student feedback. So okay, £500 is a decent amount of money, don't get me wrong. Yeah, of course, like that's a solid amount of money, and I recognize I had some luxury because I was living at home, so I didn't need it, you know, every single pound that came in. I know other people aren't in that position necessarily, but the point is £500 was a relatively low cost way for me to find out that there was actually demand for something like this, because if there wasn't, I could have shut it down at that point. But the point is, I just think the pros really outweigh the cons in starting a startup. And I'm somebody that never thought I would start a business. I'm quite risk averse. A lot of us are, especially pharmacists. Like, it's built into pharmacy is risk averse, because the consequences of getting something wrong can be quite dire. But when you're starting a startup, there's usually not that many consequences. And it's the best time when you're a student, because when you're older and, you know, you have a family and you have children and you have lots of dependents and you're in a full-time job, it's going to be a lot harder to try starting a business. So while you're a student, that's the best time. So don't let those fears hold you back and keep you like all those years away from actually starting it. Just have a go and get in touch. Like, I'm really happy to support any other like students that are starting a startup, and I can signpost loads of, you know, if there's loads of free organizations that will give free business support and advice, and I've had loads of mentors as well, like pro bono, like support me. So I'm happy to fill that role, or alternatively signpost people to that role. So yeah, get in touch if you want to start a business.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think hearing your journey as well, it's just incredible. So at the times maybe when you have had challenges, maybe it be in your OSCEs or in your exams, and you think, oh my gosh, I need to run out of the room, I want to do my OSCEs all over again. Do you have any advice for people who might experience that or felt that before?
Yeah, so the first thing is, when you're in a station, if you feel like you have messed up that station, well, if you've already done the station, don't take it into your next station, because that examiner in the next station doesn't know what happened in your last one. For all they know, you could have, you know, scored 100% and been the best person to be there that day. Like, they don't know what you've done. So don't take that energy into your next station. Like, breathe, forget it, move on, and that's it. Like, just forget that it happened, get out of your head. And I think this applies especially when I've not seen them often in pharmacy OSCEs, but if you ever have a rest station where you're like sitting and not doing anything, a lot of students will ruminate on the previous stations instead of thinking, okay, which stations have I got left? What's my structure? And that's what you need to do during an OSCE, is be forward thinking. It's all crisis management and managing the pressure. You can ruminate afterwards if you have to do that. Obviously, I don't advise it, but definitely not in the moment. So that's first things first, is just breathe and move on. If you start thinking about it, just push it out of your head and force yourself to focus on what is coming next, what's my structure. But if you're in the middle of a station and you feel like, you know, you're panicking and you've completely messed it up, you can take a breath and just say, you know, to the patient or whoever, if you just going to take a moment to think. that's fine. Actually, I find it really, like, I love seeing it. Like, when I'm practicing with my friends and they do that, we love seeing each other do it, because it actually appears really confident, because it takes confidence to be able to say that without panicking and sitting there going, or like, you know, like, if you say, I'm going to just take a moment to think, it's really, like, it's really impressive to see that. And examiners feel the same way, because they recognize that you are acting professionally under pressure. Real pharmacists do get flustered. They do get flustered. And the important thing is that they act professionally in the moment. So by doing that, you can show that you can do that. So take a moment and restructure it, and keep in your head, okay, my priority here is, how would I handle this as a real clinician, and keep patient safety at the center of it. That's the main thing. If you kept the patient safe, you're unlikely to fail. And that's the most important thing, is keeping the patient safe. But also, I find that because students focus so much on it being an exam, they act differently than they would as a clinician. And like, it's really confusing. I've mentioned this before. So for example, I've practiced, you know, with a student before, for example, and you know, I'll say, I'll be the patient. Oh, sorry, the pharmacist will say, you know, are you still taking your, you know, your sertraline for your depression? And let's say the patient goes, I've not been taking it because I've not even been feeling like, I've been actually like too like tired to do anything but get out of bed because my dad just died. And the pharmacist or the student will just be like, okay, do you smoke? But if you actually had someone's dad just died in real life, you wouldn't respond like that. But because you're in an exam, you're so focused on like the exam. But like, this is a simulation of a real encounter with a patient or a healthcare professional. So you need to act like that. And when you act like that, and when you put yourself in that mindset, you will usually come across, like, you usually handle things a lot better. It's rare that you would act away with a patient that would cause a problem in an exam. So I think that's why it's important to keep your practice like realistic, and practice with people sometimes that aren't your best friends, because if you find yourself laughing or getting too giggly, then it's sometimes better to find a group of people that are still, like, you can still be friends, but, you know, aren't your best friends, so that you can maintain that air of reality in your OSCE practice.
And do you think you had maybe during the process, like your studies, where you had like a light bulb moment of like, that is it? Were you like, in a station in exam, or was it during practice? Did you have like a certain story or a certain situation when you thought, this is it? Did you have like a light bulb moment where you like could sense yourself changing into a clinician from a student?
Oh, I don't actually think it was during my OSCEs. I think it was during my third year placement in GP. So we get our own GP clinics. So we will see a patient by ourselves and get to take the history examination, come up with a suggested management plan, and then we'll hand it over to the GP. And the GP will confirm or deny, like, if you've done everything correctly. They might want to see the patient themselves as well, just to make sure, or ask anything that you missed, or, you know, examine if you miss anything. And there was a point where I was, you know, seeing patients, and the doctor would rarely want to see them themselves because they were happy with my history examination management plan and like my medical notes. So it was kind of like I was doing, like, if I had been the GP in that role, they would have been happy with my performance and the plan that I gave. So I was like managing real patients. I think that's when I started to feel like a real clinician, because even in the OSCEs, still to this day, I do feel like I'm acting like I'm that clinician. It feels like I'm acting like the clinician that I'm going to be, but because it's not real, I know that I have, like, as an actor, on reflection, in the moment, I am acting like this is a real patient. And the moment I'm treating it like I'm this clinician and I'm role playing, but I don't think I had the identity shift because it wasn't significant enough that I felt like I'd impacted someone. But being on like GP placement and seeing them all myself and like providing them with a management plan, and that's a real person that I'm hopefully gonna, you know, have supported, that's when I had that shift.
And if there's anything that you could maybe add to OSCE stations that you've experienced on placement or experienced during your studies, what station would you add?
I think for pharmacy students, I would add a station on managing uncertainty. So I don't know if you've have these. I've not heard of this any yet. There's a few. I've had some really good ideas for like OSCE stations, but this one's mine. And the reason is because of the increasing demands in pharmacy, but also real patients can be really vague and quite confusing and quite demanding, and they can be difficult, and there is a lot of uncertainty. So we actually have this at Leicester in our final year medic exams. We have a station called Managing Uncertainty. I haven't taken it yet, so I don't know exactly what it's going to be like. But the brief is that, a patient will come in with basically very vague symptoms that won't fit one clinical picture, and you have to manage that appropriately by suggesting appropriate, investigations and a management plan and safety netting appropriately, and asking enough questions to rule out red flags. And that's basically what pharmacists do. Like, what you're doing. Like, especially in community, that's what you're doing a lot of the time, is you will have patients with vague symptoms and you have to do that. So I think because, my main thing is preparing students, like making students clinically ready, because a real priority for me is making students feel career ready. I think it's important to prepare them for things that are likely to come up, and uncertainty as a pharmacist is likely, and we know that pharmacists are risk averse, so it's important to force them into situations where they have to show risk management, which is why I think it would be a useful OSCE station, although students would hate it. Yeah.
And in terms of like pharmacy education, would there be anything that you'd improve? I know we've just mentioned about adding OSCE stations, but anything in general that you'd help to improve pharmacy education?
Yeah, I think this is kind of improving already, but I think it's the application of knowledge is where there could be more improvement. Pharmacy schools, like university system has existed for ages. They're really good at transferring the knowledge. They're good at that, but it's about making students feel as ready as possible. So, for example, in medicine, we have so much placement. Basically, all of third year, fourth year, and fifth year is just placement. There isn't as much placement time in pharmacy. And I know, the GPHC standards recently have required pharmacy schools to have a higher level of experiential learning, especially with placement. So it is improving, but it's not quite there yet. Not just because of placement time, but also because I think there isn't always enough teaching on or opportunities to simulate. A lot of pharmacy schools, they have simulations, they have got placement time, but I think more emphasis on that would really help, especially because there's such a growing feeling of uncertainty among students with the prescribing reform, that having as much exposure and practice in these different areas will just help relieve some of that anxiety. So I think the application of knowledge is like the main domain. I know that's quite broad, but I think that's the main domain, and OSCEs are just one way for me to do that I feel like I can best help with, which is why I've targeted it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And in terms of OSCE Toolbox, where do you see that going in the future, or where do you see for yourself going in the future as well?
So good question. So OSCE Toolbox is my baby, so I definitely want to continue it, and there's been offers to buy it out or things like that, but it's like a child to me at this point. That and working with my team, and it's just been so much fun that I'm definitely going to be working on OSCE Toolbox actively, even though I'll be a doctor, and I've actually made the decision to work less than full-time as a doctor so that I can keep supporting OSCE Toolbox, even if it doesn't bring in the kind of revenue that I will see eventually as a doctor. So I'll still be working on it. In terms of where it's going to go, we're like a ever-changing blob. I feel like we change directions all the time. So at one point we wanted to do cohort-based courses, and we did a little bit of testing, but we found that it would be very difficult to deliver, and it might not be as beneficial for students, and it would have to be at a very high price point for us to be able to pay pharmacists for their time. So we got rid of that idea. So we are constantly testing new things. At the minute we are looking again for more ways to reach students. It's more about impact. So we're trying to find ways, and I can't go into too much detail at the moment, but we are trying to find a way for students to be able to access us for free, because we do have a lot of free scenarios, but I don't like that students have to pay to access a full scenario, but at the same time we're bootstrapped, so we need revenue to be able to break even. So we're working on a way for students to be able to access a good amount of our scenarios for free to the end user, to hopefully reduce some of that inequality. So that's what we're working on, and also to reach more students in a more tailored way, so to be able to support students. So that's why, again, we're working with societies. So we just want to increase that, and get a better understanding of each university's OSCE format, so we can really support those students and make sure we have something for everybody. So that's what we're working on. In terms of, where we'll go after that, we're really focused on just UK pharmacy students right now. There are, of course, we could do things for pharmacy professionals, we could do things for other allied health professionals, we could do things internationally, and those are all, somewhere maybe on the horizon. But until I feel like we're doing our best to support UK pharmacy students, we're not moving on from that. Yeah.
That's really brilliant. And I know you've started doing like some events. I went to a conference recently that you did. Do you see any more conferences or events like that in the future as well?
Yeah. So that event was it was so great to have, people in the room and do like in-person stuff. And I feel, I love the in-person aspect, and like getting to like meet people and just provide something in a different format to the online thing. Because OSCE Toolbox is fun, but I like being able to actually like meet people or do things, even though on the day they can be quite stressful. But so we're gonna that event went really well, so we're gonna make it an annual event. So officially there will be a second National Pharmacy Student Conference this year, and it should be every year. And we will also be hosting other events. We're trying to work on, because we have a lean team, and we're like bootstrapped, we're trying to work on how we can best do it. So of course we held also the National Pharmacy Society dinner as well, so that will continue, so we can connect farm stocks with each other, because obviously they're like a really niche group of students that are like super passionate. So we want to focus on those high yield things first, so the student conference, the Pharmacy Society dinner, but we also want to support other events too. So because it's difficult for us to constantly be hosting events on such a lean like team, while we also need to manage the platform, we want to support other events. So we are supporting societies like with their events where we can, and we hope to be able to increase the funding we have available to do that, whether it's financially or through merchandise or things like that. We did also host the Pharmacy Creator Summit. You may have seen that. So I'm now working on something with a friend, Dr. Devafai. So we're working on something for healthcare creators too. So it's a bit separate, but hopefully that will contribute to raising the profile and awareness of like pharmacy as a profession, what it involves, the challenges, to bring that to the awareness of lay people, the same way that a lot of people look at doctors now. And there is, of course, people know pharmacy creators, but to just try and boost and amplify that even more is what we're working on. Yeah.
So if there's one thing that students can take away from this episode, what do you think it would be?
I think it should be that OSCEs are a learnable skill. And like every skill, you can build it and improve it. It's like a muscle that you need to work out. So that's the main thing. So no matter what stage you're at, you can always get better at OSCEs, and then in turn correlates with your confidence and competence in career, in practice, in clinical practice.
Personal question, have you ever messed up an OSCE before?
Okay, so I've gotten quite lucky, because I've always scored over 80% like in all my OSCEs. So I've always been first SR in my OSCEs because of the prep. Like it's not just I prep hard, but there's been a few stations. So like in year 2, that was our first set of OSCEs ever. We started from year 2. There was one station where I think I got 60%. It was because I ran out of time. It was an easy station, like in theory. It's lifestyle. It was like lifestyle advice. I think there was a patient, they were like gonna have an operation. I think they were advised to lose weight before the operation to reduce the risk of complications. And I just spent so long setting up and like asking about other areas in their life, or like I can't remember, but I just spent so long that I didn't get to the point and provide like actionable advice, or like I just didn't really get to the meat of the station. So that was just poor time management. I don't know why. So I was okay. So since that's when I was like, okay, I am going to make sure I'd practice always under time conditions, because we did. But I also think I underestimated that station. So I think I practiced it less. So yeah, I learned my lesson. And then also in year 4, there was 2 stations. Oh my God. So year 4, we have specialty stations. So we had a gynecological station and a cancer care station. And the cancer care station was 20 minutes long. And there was lots of things you had to do in one station. And I think because there was so much new knowledge that year as well, the cancer care one was I got a diagnosis wrong. So my differentials from the history, there was like an important differential that I missed. So that probably affected my score because I didn't suggest the correct investigations. But luckily I used my tips and I moved on and just did the rest of the task. So I did pass the station even though I missed like a huge differential. But yeah, that was just thinking narrowly. And then the gynae station, the condition was atrophic vaginitis, which in my head was like the easiest condition ever. Because I thought it was so easy, I didn't revise it properly. So I revised all these other like conditions and not like one of the most common like conditions like in that demographic. So I think I lost a little bit of confidence and didn't provide all the not correct, but I provided correct advice, but I didn't say all the things that were important as part of the management. So I did screen for it, but again, I did pass it because I think I screened for red flags, etc. And my communication skills, I heavily made up for it, I think, with communication skills. So that's why I did pass all of those. But I think I scored in those ones. I scored like 65%. So still a pass, but obviously it was lower than my average. Yeah.
Not everyone's perfect. I think that's brilliant that you've mentioned you're relying on your communication. I think that's something you can always fall back on, is your presence and the tone and the way you present yourself. So I'm going to go on some quick fire questions. That'd be okay with you?
Yeah.
So do you drink coffee or tea?
I'm a tea girl. I love tea. I tried to actually get into coffee. Like, I really tried, but I just felt my body doesn't love it. Like, it just doesn't like it. I drink tea, I feel warm inside. I'm like, nice. And plus I can have as many as I want without worrying. Like, because I can have like 3 cups of tea a day and I don't think like, oh my God, have I now got a caffeine addiction? Am I about to start like feeling palpitations? So I'm a tea girl.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what was your favourite module when you were studying?
Oh my gosh, great question. I think across all of the years, my favourite, I'm really good at sexual health. I wouldn't work in sexual health just because I just don't enjoy like the day-to-day practice of it. But knowledge-wise, like I just find that I can map it really well. I think it's sort of, there's not as many conditions as there are in other specialties, and I feel like the management is quite simple. A lot of the advice is very similar, and it's quite a holistic thing. So I think sexual health is my favorite because I found it quite simple and practical, and it maps up very closely. Like when we had our placement in sexual health, I was seeing it almost exactly as I had revised it, like the presentation, the management, everything. Yeah.
That's interesting. And when you study, do you like to study without music or with music?
So I am neither, but I don't have nothing on. I usually have a YouTube video on. I have like a Minecraft gameplay on in the background.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
I just feel like I need to have something playing, like to remove like external stimuli, but it shouldn't be too entertaining that I'm distracted. But I gotta have something.
And pharmacy-wise, if you could be any drug, what drug would you be?
Ooh, oh my gosh, if I could be any drug. Oh, I know. Sertraline, so I can make everyone happy with no, like, low side effects. Yeah.
I think that sums you up perfectly. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Hopefully you've learnt some tips about your OSCEs and now you can go smash your exams.